parliaments all over the world are grappling with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on their obligations, such as oversight, lawmaking and public involvement. The South African Parliament has been exploring effective means to conduct its work virtually should social distancing continue for longer than planned. For more on this, we're joined by the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Lechesa Tsenoli, from Cape Town, I believe. Good to have you on the program, Deputy Speaker. Would you say that the COVID-19 pandemic has had a serious detrimental effect on the work of Parliament in the last 2 years?
Only by detrimental that we mean we have lost members. I think the number in Parliament especially is close to 15 roughly, and that's tragic. That's, if by detrimental you mean that, yes, indeed it has. But also there have others who have been hospitalized, members and staff, and that in that sense, indeed, yes, it has been detrimental to the work we do. So there are other ways in which it prevented us from doing what otherwise would have been the most appropriate way to do it. One of those is effective public engagement in places where ordinarily we would be interacting with people. The curtailment of that itself means that we couldn't do what otherwise is a preferred way of handling interaction and engagement of people in the work of Parliament.
Would you say then that in 2021 this has been a successful year for the work of Parliament?
Well, fortunately, we were already on course to build our digital virtual systems, and we were able to quickly adapt. Of course, there were very hilarious moments. There's no question about it. Of members, all of us trying to adjust to using virtual platforms, and some of the images that we were forced to see, which we shouldn't have seen, that adaptation is now gone. We've done so, and many people continue to be affected. What remains is that COVID exposed how inadequate infrastructure is, because people who lived in rural areas had often to travel to sports, speak from inside their cars, because there wasn't good infrastructure reception there where they were, and so on. So in that way, it disrupted us in significant ways. But at the same time, it also meant that our ability to interact virtually, we could do so more frequently than we could do face-to-face. And also some resources for traveling, because we couldn't travel anymore. So some of that money went elsewhere to support the work of Parliament, because like all other sections of the state, broadly speaking, we've been hit by cuts, budget cuts in very significant ways. So it was a combination of factors, given what was happening to the economy, that we too were impacted upon. And so, but those resources, although they were saved by not traveling, had to compensate areas which needed them most.
One portfolio committee that was seized quite early in the year with a lot of work related to the COVID-19 pandemic was the Health Portfolio Committee. It was quite early on hit by the Digital Vibe scandal that subsequently saw the resignation of the now former Minister, Lechesa. Now, when that process began to unfold around the reporting by the SIU, there was clearly partisan division between the parties, where the opposition felt that ANC MPs were to a degree protecting the former minister and some of the officials from the department. Partisan division is not a new thing in the South African Parliament, but given the nature of this global health emergency, what work is being done by the institution of Parliament to ensure that such committees actually do what's best for the country versus party lines?
Well, that's a very significant point, in that, in fact, some of the work we have been doing already to ensure that our decisions must be evidence-based, that we must ensure that members act in the interest of the people who asked us to represent them. And this is by what happens both within political parties and the injunctions that they are brought to follow inside Parliament, but also inside Parliament itself. The management of these matters is handled at a variety of levels to ensure that committees and their interaction is absolutely robust. There were instances when we couldn't get to, there were differences of opinion in how do you handle matters of that were arising and how they could be managed effectively so that, for example, the minister is called so that he's able to account for what he's done. Instead, at the time, the leadership of the committee felt in its wisdom to inquire first and to account on those issues to the committee so that the committee then takes decisions beyond that of what further must be done. This is a dilemma of mandate and accountability, that often the leadership takes decisions that must be condoned if it is the feeling of the committee and or not condoned if they were not in the interest of the committee.
But we do need to address the partisan nature in which issues that affect everyday people are discussed in Parliament.
No. They are. There's no question. They are debated and discussed. And people get dragged in there. There are officials and so on and ministers who have been told in no uncertain term of the displeasure of members. It happens. Okay. So, yes, that has happened. It's a crucial thing.
We're racing against
we must continue to address.
Pardon me, Deputy Speaker, we're racing against the clock here, but I want to squeeze in a few other issues. You mentioned the issue of accountability. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts, SCOPA, deals with a lot of that, where departments and public entities are concerned. Just now, at the end of November, SCOPA was very unhappy, for example, with the quality of reporting and feedback from ESCOM management on issues such as, I think it was financial decisions, they spoke about decision-making that wasn't clear, irregular expenditure, adherence to due process, and consequence management. That was just the nub of SCOPA's complaint with ESCOM's session when they appeared. Why is it that we're still dealing with an issue in 2021 where SOEs and ministries still have a situation where they either go to Parliament unprepared or some ministers don't even appear at all when they're invited to come take questions?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. This is an ongoing thing. This is why the Parliament and the authority it has to call them to account will have instances where people have been consistently performing well, their records say so, and others on certain occasions act exactly in the opposite direction, and therefore they get hauled for accountability purposes and so on. And this in the debate comes up very sharply. And so this is the nature of a political environment.
Do you think
you cannot, sorry?
Do you think a platform such as the Standing Committee on Public Accounts needs more teeth to get through most of its work with more substance than the back and forth with people who turn up with incomplete paperwork and the like?
Yeah, they have been thrown away. I remember she's no longer there. Just as an example, the chairperson of Arts and Culture, who told officials to go right back, that you will not continue with this situation because you are ill-prepared. Go back. And so in that way, those people now know, having been thrown out of Parliament because they were not prepared, will not dare do that again, because then it gets escalated. So these are the kind of practices that happens. You see, there's a turnover in institutions and in organizations. People who ought to be doing things sometimes take chances, but unfortunately, they do not get long before they get caught and they are dealt with. In the nature of things. I wanted to say earlier on, if I may just direct our Parliament itself and its management of its affairs. We've had 7 consecutive clean audits, which suggests that there's something right, one or two things correctly being done in the management of the affairs of Parliament, so that it serves as an example to the rest of the departments and entities that it manages, it oversees rather, that this thing can be done. We are doing it here. Mm-hmm. And those departments do achieve, few as they are, such clean audits, but also it must also reflect the appropriate services it renders to the sector for which it is important. This is the environment in which we seek to also teach by example that this is what must be done.
Final question, perhaps in 30 seconds if you can. Deputy Speaker, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, speaking this weekend, urged SADC parliaments, the regional parliaments, to work together on issues such as human rights, peace and stability, economic development. What is the role of South Africa's legislature in that program when you look at contexts such as the ongoing pro-democracy protests in Eswatini? You've got the insurgency in northern Mozambique, you've got the never-ending problems in Zimbabwe, for instance.
Yeah, we work multilaterally. Parliamentary diplomacy requires of us to work with other parliaments. In fact, you would remember that, in fact, the Speaker was recently appointed to represent us in that structure of the SADC Parliamentary Forum. We also serve in other forums where Swaziland is part of the membership of those associations, and these questions are attended to and discussed there, so that there is multilateral approach to questions, so that no single country is seen to be so-called interfering in affairs of the other countries. But we do play a robust but diplomatic role in that environment to try and help solve those issues.
And we've got the ever-growing questions about how that diplomacy is working. But for now, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Lechesa Tsenoli, grateful for your time tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ndati. Thank you.
Well, just to ask